Pisces 10, an aviator in the clouds. This is a metaphor for a higher state of consciousness. And we must be aware that a transcendental state of mind can exist for those of us willing to do the necessary work to learn techniques, meditation techniques and so on, just to raise ourselves above it all. It's a bit like climbing up a mountain or going away on holiday even, where you look at your life from a different perspective and you can see what it is, which you cannot do when you're embracing all the detail and you're down to earth with it. But when you're above it all, you can just see what you're doing much more clearly with a different perspective. And this idea of changing perspective is central to spiritual development. You have to change the way the mind works. And when we think of mind, it's not just the thinking patterns, the logic, the false logic, the intuition. It's not just that. There's also the physical element, the brain itself. And there's an inclination for the brain to kind of crystallize itself into a certain habit of thinking, a way of inferring because of that, therefore this. And that crystallization into habits of thought is detrimental to our spiritual progression, and sometimes devastatingly so. You can't continue to think the same way that you always thought if you want your life to be different, because life comes from the mind. We create our lives from the mind. And if the mind keeps on doing what it's always done before, no possibility of significant change can actually occur. So it's essential, if you're on a serious path of progression, that you give yourself an opportunity to look down, as it were, to supervise your life from a higher perspective. The image of being high up is also important. The transcendental state isn't up there. It's not something we can measure physically. It's not up in any serious state, and God doesn't live up there in the sky, and heaven isn't up there. It's all metaphor, because we couldn't actually understand how to symbolize it differently. But we do symbolize up as having this detached perspective. Moreover, we consider up to be better than down, typically, and a mind that can visit the transcendental states and just move into a very objective self-consciousness, if that's not a contradiction in terms. That mind is clearer, is purified of these habits of crystallized thinking. And in those states of being, we see what we could be. We get a sense of the difference between what we have realized and what would be our potential, or at least the next stage towards our potential. We can't really see further than the horizon, and the horizon is as if the next stage of our growth. But when we can see what we could be from a higher transcendental perspective, then we have an appetite to become that. And we see certain people that have created their lives from that appetite, and they want to achieve the very best they can for themselves. And they approach and they eventually master whatever excellent position they've imagined for themselves. And this sense of mastery is actually what we're discussing here. The master is somebody who has raised their game. They've actually learned how to be on top of the world and glimpse, occasionally, transcendental consciousness. It takes creativity, it takes courage, it takes motivation to move into this state of being. And mastery isn't really a set of skills that you've learned. It's an attitude of mind, a state of being that you've claimed and you continue to claim. So in a sense, when we've mastered one thing, we're very close to mastering several, if not many. Certain figures, Rudolf Steiner, for example, and Dane Rudhyar himself, these guys have mastered various different techniques, not just astrology or psychology, but also music and art very often, and so on. And if you approach life with this sense of like, I can, if I actually want to, if I put my mind to it, then I can. And you move into this state of being where you expect to be able to do what other people cannot do. And life becomes richer. Life becomes much, much more satisfying. And we overcome our reluctance to serve the community. A lot of people just do the minimum, pay their taxes reluctantly, get away with it if they can. But there are some people that aren't like that. They just embrace it all and just do the necessary when it comes up and keep running, as it were, faster than the speed of life. They accelerate through life, getting more and more capable. And this is a sense of how we can be on our spiritual path. When we're highly advanced spiritually, then life becomes really like that. We move quickly to the next thing and we master it, and then the next thing we master that. Not quickly in the sense of days or months, but we can actually realize several careers, for example, in a lifetime, and just develop a richness and depth of capability in life, simply because we've freed the mind from its self-limiting belief that because of A, B must be the case. It's not like that. A does not always lead to B in the mind of a creative person. That's the scientific way of looking at things. A implies B. But in a creative person, it can lead to whatever you choose it to lead to. Now, with this approach to life, you kind of welcome problems, more like puzzles than difficult life issues. The challenges that we have can necessarily be solved. That's why we've attracted them. We don't attract challenges into our lives to prove us to be incapable. Why would we do that? We attract challenges into our lives in order to grow in our ability to overcome them, and therefore to move into a higher state of consciousness. This applies on the outer level and the inner level equally so. The outer level is just dealing with the world and taking on greater responsibilities and developing greater abilities. On the inner plane, it means mastering our emotional nature, mostly. And just notice whether you're moving in that direction. Are you still getting as angry as you used to? Does life get you down the same way it used to? Well, then you're not progressing spiritually. Is that clear? If you're still disturbed emotionally, the same ways that you always have been, then you're not progressing. And the way to overcome that is to take on challenges. It's much more difficult to deal with the inner challenges unless you deal with the outer challenges at the same time, I've found. So take on extra burdens. Not beyond your ability, but just the leading edge of your progression, the development stage of your ability, as it were. So what your challenges are lessons for you to learn how to do things. So in a sense, they're studies. And if we don't stop studying, then we just continue to learn more and more as life progresses. So the wisdom here is just to realize that the game does not end, this game of life. We must raise our game all of the time and try to reach up, to be better today than we were, to look forward to challenges because they're opportunities to learn, and to expect to be something that you were not before, something almost unimaginably better than you were before. Expect that. That's a part of the the process, expectation of improvement.